This one is about the Dictator, who, when I made the video the other day about panic, I realised that these two things are kind of linked together. They're kind of like two sides of the same coin, in as much as the panic one comes from the emotional body. That's when the emotions get riled up, and then it comes out and erupts and takes off. Where the Dictator is cerebral. It's all thinking, no feeling. It's kind of logic, reason, it thinks. But it has its own set of logic and reason that it's been collecting from early childhood. So even though it thinks it knows a lot of things, it actually doesn't. It's quite mixed up generally. But yeah, I was thinking that it was a good idea to talk about that side of the equation, the Dictator, because it is, in some ways, the anxiety and the panic, and they kind of go hand in hand, because when the anxiety sets off the panic, it sets that off because it wants to stay in control. And so then it chastises the panic because it wants it to push it back down so that it can stay in control, because the emotional centre is actually stronger than it. Like, the emotional drive is stronger than the thinking drive generally, especially in sensitive people. And so it becomes more active when the other side is active. So when there's panic, it's there wanting to squash it in any way that it can, and it tries to take control of the situation, but it can't, and so it becomes more and more exasperated by the fact that the emotional centre can't understand its logic, and the emotional centre becomes more upset than it needs to be, because it's being constantly chastised by this thing that's coming down on it, telling it it's stupid and that it needs to get a grip, and it's just everything that it does is wrong. And so the two parts are just at war all the time, and they spark each other off. And so as soon as one's out, you've got them both. So yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about what that looks like and how I dealt with that one, because it's not the same as the one that comes from the emotional body, in as much as how I dealt with it wasn't the same. It isn't after love and affection, like the one that wants to just be everything to be taken away from it and it just to be brought into you, and it's just like, it's okay, I've got this, you know, you can relax. It's the kind of person in the world that, you know, that if you were to try and hug them, they'd be like, I don't want to get off, don't want to be hugged. It wants logic, it wants reason, it doesn't want affection, it doesn't understand love, it doesn't understand emotion in that way at all. Everything it looks at from its own little storage of logic, which generally speaking isn't right. So how I dealt with that was using logic to it, because it wasn't going to respond to being loved. Like, I love you, you know, you can come back to me. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, you know, I know things. I don't need to be, I stand alone. It's that kind of energy. You know, you can't, there's nothing that you can give me. It feels like it is all prevailing, but it knows that it isn't, and so it's constantly exasperated by the things it's trying to control but can't. But it feels that if everything would just listen to it and let it be the god of it all, that things would be alright. But because the mind is the mind and it does what it does, they will have as much space as it does. It just spends its whole time trying to just make it bloody stop. It's that kind of, you know, and all it really wants to do is it wants to have control so that it can bring everything down and just look at the world from a completely logical place without all this eruption going on. It thinks that if it was allowed to be in control, there would never be another problem, because it wouldn't use emotion to deal with it, and it wouldn't, but there wouldn't be much fun going on. So yeah, I dealt with it using logic by when it would come in and start to chastise and say, because it would always use you are doing it wrong. You're doing it. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Oh, you're doing it like that. Why are you doing it like that? Because it's got an answer for everything. It's got a perfect way of doing everything. And the sloppy human is just never quite getting it right. And so everything is wrong. It's like like teeth cleaning, for example. It, at some point during childhood, saw or was told that teeth should be cleaned for 2 minutes. And so when I'm cleaning my teeth, I'm often not thinking about how long I'm cleaning them for. It doesn't do it anymore, but it would always be there telling me that I hadn't cleaned them for long enough. And that wasn't 2 minutes. It was like it was counting. Or if it went over 2 minutes, but that's too long, you're going to rub the gums away. It was like constantly there, oh no, you're doing it wrong again. And it literally dictates moment to moment, just everything you do is wrong. So what I found the best way to deal with it was when it came in and says, you're doing that wrong, you go, okay, how would you do it? And sometimes it would know, and sometimes it wouldn't even know how it would do it. Because it was just so used to telling you it was wrong, it actually didn't have an idea, but it just, you're wrong. And so it wouldn't be able to explain how you should do it. And another question I would ask it is, who are you? Who are you that thinks that you can tell me what to do, or you know, what is in this for you? What are you doing? Who are you? Those sort of questions, which makes it look at itself. You ask it what it is. So what are you? What's your role? Why are you here? Because you see me as me, the one that's doing it. So you see this is my life, my existence. I'm the doer of this, as far as you're concerned. So what are you doing? Why are you here? You obviously don't like it. You're not enjoying it. So what are you doing? And it makes it look at itself. And it starts to think, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Who am I? And when you keep giving it these questions, so each time it comes in you ask it a question back and you make it think for itself rather than just concentrating on you, it kind of comes undone because it sees its own pointlessness. It kind of sees through itself and thinks, well, why am I doing this? Who am I? And when that happens, that's quite shocking for it because it can't see its own purpose, because it can learn to realise that it's never going to get control. It never is, because it never has. And everything else always just does what it does. And it stands there like a tyrant, constantly barraging everything else, yet nobody takes any notice of it. And it's sort of a pleasant experience, so why is it doing it? And it kind of realises it doesn't have to do it. And when it gets that realisation, I don't actually have to do this, it's like that. It's like, oh my God, thank Christ for that. Well, I can actually stop this. And it's like it's let out of jail. I mean, it was put there, you put it there. It came to life in you to watch over everything. But it happened when you were little. You don't need it there anymore. But it didn't know it could stop. And so it's been going on and on and on, and growing and doing it. And it's pointless. And it realises it's pointless. And when it gets it, the relief, it's so pleased. It's so absolutely delighted that it doesn't have to tell anybody off anymore. It can just go and sit somewhere quietly and just breathe out and go, oh my God, it's over. Like, imagine the worst job you've ever done, the worst day at work, and you came out and it was over. It's like that, but it's about everything. The whole thing's over. It just doesn't have to do it anymore. And once, it gets that. Now, it might get that for a few minutes and then go back into it. And then it may be a time before it sees it again. Or it might stay out. It might stay out unless something particularly alarming happens, and then it'll come back out. But you just keep doing it. You keep pushing it back to thinking that. And of course, once it's got it once, next time you mention it, it goes, oh yeah. And then, it doesn't want to be doing what it's doing. It's doing it because it's like a reflex that it didn't know. It's a pattern it was stuck in. And so it can see it and stop it. And then it kind of leaves you alone. And you don't have this dictator there all the time. Which is far easier to live with and more pleasant. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all about that. I'm not sure, but that's good talking. So nice to speak to you, and any comments, it's nice to read your comments, and if you've got questions, ask me and I'll make answers for them. Okay, speak to you soon, bye.